We're delighted to have with us today a member of the Board of Directors at the High Plains Western Heritage Center, Jim Clarkson. Jim, good to have you with us.
Good to be here, I think.
Well, of course it is. Jim spends a lot of time at the museum and has for the past few years, serving on the board. Of course, the name Clarkson is a familiar one, particularly in western South Dakota and around this entire region. Jim, you are, as I understand it, a grandson of Al Clarkson. Was that what they called?
Yes, yep, Al.
Tell me who Al Clarkson was and how he ended up in western South Dakota.
Well, he was my granddad, originally from West Virginia. He came out in 1888 and worked in Fruitdale that first winter, and then walked to the Cave Hills and got a job and went back to West Virginia because of sickness in the family. Came back in '90 and he's been here ever since. He started ranching when there was open range up in Harding County, and then put his ranch together basically in the teens and 20s when the homesteaders decided to leave and abandon, and he bought the places out for 40 and 50 cents an acre.
Now, he had a pretty good sized family, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he had a brother and then cousins and stuff that came out here.
Okay.
He brought his brother and his first cousin out in the early 1900s. And
then his own family that he raised.
Yeah, well, he had my dad and then two daughters, and then they had another son that was born died as a baby. But
so Harding County is where, as they say, it all began in
oh,
South
yes,
Dakota.
yep.
And that's where you started your young career, probably in the...
I was raised on a ranch in Harding County where my granddad started, and I'm third generation on the ranch, and I just passed it on to family last year, so I'm just out of it.
And this was in the Cave Hills area,
North and
right?
South Cave Hills, yes.
But you went to school in...
Buffalo.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
And graduated in about 1966.
1966, yep.
Is what you told me. And during this time, of course, you were a ranch kid. You were...
Oh, yeah.
And so you're familiar with all aspects of ranching and the...
Well, you kind of had to be.
Yeah, you had to be. You had to get all those things done.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the way, you had interests in some history. We'll talk momentarily about that. But girls, because you met your wife up in that area too.
My wife was raised on a ranch southwest of Buffalo, and we got married in 1970, and she spent 25 years on the ranch with me, and then we moved to Spearfish.
Tell me about how you developed this appetite for history, which obviously you've carried with you for a lot of years.
My dad was a huge historian, and every time we went anywhere as a family, it was on a little history trip. We went to Medora, we went to Custer Battlefield, we went to Fort Robinson. It was Western history at our house.
Ah, Fort Robinson, Nebraska.
Yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
you covered some territory.
Oh, we went everywhere, yeah.
A real appetite for history. So when you came down to Spearfish from time to time, and you eventually moved here, but when you came down here, you had heard about the genesis of this place called the High Plains Western Heritage Center. When did that sort of come about?
Oh, well, we always listened to KBHB radio, and our neighbor up at the ranch, Edgar Gardner, was one of the founders of the High Plains Heritage Center. And we were always aware of the big fundraising they had and all that.
So you used to come down and you were a volunteer.
Oh yeah, volunteered here, and that's how I got roped into what I'm doing now.
Got roped into not only talking about cattle ranching, but sheep ranching too.
Yeah, I'm Carla's sheep specialist. I camp up here upstairs by the sheep wagon.
Now, you decided after your many years of ranching up in Harding County to move to Spearfish. What brought about that change?
My wife was nursing at the hospital down here when we got married.
Now this is Janice, right?
Janice, and she always She moved to the ranch and spent 25 years with me, and she always kind of had a desire to get back into nursing, and so she did. There was an opportunity for her, and we had always thought we'd probably retire here. We had bought some land here in the early 80s and decided it was a good time to build a house and move down here.
So as you've traveled around, and we visited a bit earlier about this, you've had a chance to see a lot of museums. Of course, your grandfather was inducted into the National Cowboy Hall of Fame at Oklahoma City.
Yep.
So you've seen that, and you've seen a lot of other museums. How do we stack up here at High Plains Western Heritage Center, and what is it that you think is valuable for the folks in this area to know about and understand?
Well, I think the place stacks up really well. It's large, it's various out in here, but it really gives the people locally what has happened here, our Western heritage. You know, we was raised on cattle ranching, and that's what's here.
Jim, what do you see as a board member for High Plains Western Heritage Center? What do you see as maybe the biggest challenge and, more importantly, the biggest opportunity that we have?
Well, the biggest challenge has been the COVID. It was almost devastating. Thank God we had Carla here to get us through it. And as far as the future, I think we've got room to go. We're going to try to have some additions here and just keep growing.
Well, we've seen many improvements, and not the least of which, of course, is the paving of our parking lot and the driveway up here. And I know your family, and I think there was another family that was...
The Bradleys.
The Bradleys were instrumental in that happening, and there's more yet to come for the High Plains Western Heritage Center. What excites you the most when you think about your involvement with the High Plains Western Heritage Center?
Oh, just being part of improving it and getting people to know what is here. I'm always a little disappointed on the locals not understanding what we have here. This is history.
It is indeed, and it's really a bright, shining spot.
It is, it really is.
Because it reflects all of the heritage of this area, not just ranching, though that's a key ingredient, but forestry and mining, and it goes on.
Oh, the
Native
mining's
American
a big
history.
part of our heritage.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Jim, thanks for taking time to visit with us and tell us a little bit about your background and interest.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you kindly.